Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video ahead of Matchday 5. This will be the best Limitless team, and this video is recorded almost a week early, but if this video gets to over 200 likes, there will be a best wildcard team, a team selection video, and the UCL Fantasy deadline stream next week, which will keep you posted on all the injuries and everything else you need to know heading into the Matchday 5 deadline. There's also a lot of FPL content for Game Week 13, the transfer tips, 2 team selection videos, the wildcard team. There's going to be a deadline stream and reaction stream over the weekend too, so be sure not to miss it by subscribing to the channel, sharing this video around with those that love FPL and UCL Fantasy. It will be great to have you on board. There's also links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, and the UCL Fantasy League, which has thousands of members already. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video and build the best 15-man squad on the Limitless. I have gone for ter Stegen once again. I know Porto isn't an easy game, but Barcelona are at home. They've got some key defenders back from injuries, such as Jules Koundé, and I think if he starts, he makes a huge impact on the Barcelona defence, and there's a good chance of Barcelona keeping a clean sheet, winning the game, and securing top spot in their Champions League group. Unfortunately, the likes of Gavi got injured on the international break, and a lot of Barcelona fans are furious, to say the least, with the Spanish national team manager, but ter Stegen is still a good goalkeeper in UCL Fantasy, and I'd still recommend him on the Limitless. And remember, you have no budget restrictions on the Limitless. You can build any team you like, so long as you have 3 forwards, 5 midfielders, 5 defenders, and 2 goalkeepers. So I have gone for ter Stegen, and the second one is also very risky, and that is David Raya at home to Lens. But over the weekend, David Raya will not play against Brentford in the Premier League because that's his parent club. He's on loan from Brentford to Arsenal, and as a result, he will not play, and it could be Ramsdale. So there is the odd possibility of Ramsdale playing really well and cementing and securing a spot for the Champions League as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if in either Matchday 5 or 6, Ramsdale got at least one Champions League appearance, because he obviously played a big part in Arsenal finishing second last season and also doing a very impressive title charge. So maybe Raya isn't the safest option, but if we get that feeling and security of Raya starting in the Champions League in Matchday 5, I think he's one of the very best goalkeepers in the game and has a great chance of a clean sheet against Lens, and Arsenal could get the revenge and secure a top spot with a victory there over the French opposition. So I have gone for ter Stegen and David Raya. Ederson's still a decent shout against Leipzig, although I would favour the defenders like Ruben Dias, as we'll get on to very soon. Jan Sommer is also not too bad either, but he is facing Benfica away, who to be fair are out, have nothing to lose, but still, I think Sommer is still a decent choice. Ramirez also a good shout on the Limitless. I know it's very uncommon to go for very cheap players on the Limitless, but it's still worth considering, and he's one of the very best goalkeepers in isolation in Matchday 5. Let me know if there's any other goalkeepers that catch your eye for this upcoming deadline, and the same goes for every other position that we're going to cover. Let's now move on to the defenders, where things get even more interesting. During the deadline stream, I saw the news that Haaland is going to start, and as a result, I made 5 or 6 late changes, last minute basically, and I was able to get Haaland back in. And one of those changes included getting Saliba back into my side, and I'm very happy with that decision. He got an 8-pointer. He had back-to-back home games, and to be honest, I added one of the very first defenders that I saw that I thought could be decent, and Saliba delivered, not just in UCL Fantasy, but also in FPL. I bought him last week too in that fantasy format, and he scored straight after Burnley equalised against Arsenal. So Saliba's delivered 8 points in UCL Fantasy and 9 points in FPL. He's a fantastic player in all fantasy formats, and because of ball recoveries, he is even more excellent in UCL Fantasy as well. So I'd highly recommend him, and a defensive double up for Arsenal is definitely worth considering in Matchday 5 against Lens at home, and I think Raya and Saliba are 2 of the very best ways of covering the Gunners' defence. Now next up will be not everyone's cup of tea, but Ruben Dias is fantastic for ball recoveries too, and he's been very consistent all season. I don't think City have kept enough clean sheets really to justify that price tag, but he is still one of the highest scoring defenders as a result because of those ball recoveries. And in terms of attacking threat, you're not going to get too much from Ruben Dias. You could also say the same about Saliba, despite the fact that Saliba scored in his last Premier League game too. But Ruben Dias is a very solid and dependable option. I've personally got Rico Lewis because he's been starting all the Champions League games. He's another good shout, but I think Ruben Dias is definitely a very good way into that Manchester City defence. Now you might be arguing, well, Man City have secure qualification, so why go for Manchester City players, period? Because they're facing Leipzig, and let's say Leipzig win against Manchester City, and in Matchday 6, they could pit Man City to top spot, and that could be very crucial in the knockout stages in the round of 16. So I think Ruben Dias will start in Matchday 5, and Manchester City will still go very strong, and that's why I would still advocate a double or triple up in the Citizens in Matchday 5 on the Limitless. Now the third defender is going to be a former Manchester City player, and that is Joao Cancelo, who has the ball recoveries, the attacking potential, and also the clean sheet probabilities. So that's another defensive double up there, Arsenal and Barcelona. And Joao Cancelo has the same amount of points as Ruben Dias, and also he's got 22 points overall. So I still like Joao Cancelo. He has been a bit underwhelming in recent weeks, but I think one clean sheet from the next two is possible, and he is the best way to cover Barcelona defensively. You've also got Jules Koundé, but I think Cancelo is a bit more nailed on. He can also sometimes play as a right winger. That happened in a recent La Liga game, although Cancelo didn't play particularly well. It is worth mentioning. And the fourth defender we're going to go for is a very cheap one in Munoz from Real Sociedad. So if you don't go for Ramiro, not to worry, you can go for Munoz, who's got ball recoveries, assist potential, and also some decent clean sheet probabilities, especially against Salzburg in Matchday 5. So I would highly recommend Munoz. He's someone I haven't really covered before, but I think he's definitely worth mentioning. That leaves just one spot left, and to be honest, this is the least secure part of the defensive line, because Bayern Munich have already gone through and they could actually rotate quite heavily and still win comprehensively against Copenhagen, and that's Kim Min-jae. Do you think he's going to start in Matchday 5? Will Bayern Munich rotate? Because first place is already secured and they could beat Copenhagen with a few rested players there. But Kim Min-jae is fantastic for ball recoveries. Despite keeping 0 clean sheets this season in this season's Champions League, he's got 18 points, and that's because the ball recoveries are insane. I really need to show you this, because look at that, 5 pointers from Matchdays 2 to 4, and that's because he's got 40 ball recoveries. That is absolutely exceptional, and I think he could be a fantastic option in the knockout stages too. Bayern Munich aren't great defensively. We all know this. I've been speaking about it for a couple of weeks now. But Kim Min-jae is still a good UCL fantasy option because of the ball recovery points. For every 3 balls recovered, he gains a point there. So I would definitely recommend Kim Min-jae. The only issue is, will he start in Matchday 5? If so, I think a clean sheet and maybe 2 or 3 ball recovery points is possible. So you could be looking at 9 to 10 points there for Kim Min-jae, depending on if Bayern Munich can keep that clean sheet. So I've gone for this defensive 5. There's 2 defensive double ups, and we've also covered Manchester City, Real Sociedad, and Bayern Munich defensively. And of course, you've got so many other options elsewhere like Trippier, Theo Hernandez, but they are in the group of death. Those games are so difficult to predict. And honestly, I really like these fixtures and these clubs defensively, with the exception of Bayern Munich. The first midfielder is Bukayo Saka, and guess what? That is 8 players so far out of 8 with home fixtures. That's also a massive plus, and I actually used the Limitless in Matchday 2, and a lot of my players were away from home, so really looking back on it, I would have liked to have used the Limitless in Matchday 5, because it really is looking exceptional this week. But Lens is a good fixture for Saka. He got the assist before coming off injured in the reverse fixture in Matchday 2, and it was around 20 minutes or so, but he still managed to get that assist and a 4-pointer, and this time round another home game, and it could be yet another double-digit return for Saka, and that's 2 out of 2 at the Emirates in the Champions League with over 10 points. So I really like Saka in general. Apart from Bellingham, I would argue Saka is the best midfielder in UCL Fantasy, and by quite some distance. Now, someone I like historically who hasn't been at his absolute best so far is Leroy Sané. He's been amazing for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, and in the Champions League he's been okay. I think he was a bit lucky to get the Man of the Match award in Matchday 1, but he got it. Musiala is currently injured, and it looks like he could be out until December. He's currently in my team, so I need to look to maybe sell him, unfortunately. But Leroy Sané is the best way to cover the Bayern Munich midfield. Harry Kane, of course, in general, will be the best way to cover their attack, but Sané is the second best in command there. He's got 20 UCL fantasy points, and he is still a really consistent option and well worth the money, which of course doesn't really matter anyway on the Limitless. My third midfielder is going to be Phil Foden, and he's got 20 UCL fantasy points as well. I bought him on the wild card once I found out that Foden and Haaland started, and he got that goal against Young Boys and an 8-pointer. He's also got a Man of the Match award in this reverse fixture against Leipzig, so Foden is a terrific option there in UCL Fantasy, and he has maybe a bit of a history or bad reputation in FPL for being benched whenever people go for him, and Pep Guardiola can be a bit of a troll, but Foden has a good chance of starting against Leipzig. If that's the case, I think he's definitely worth considering And when Man City reached the Champions League final a few years ago, when they ultimately lost to Chelsea, Foden was one of the very best UCL Fantasy midfielders in that campaign. We could see something similar this time round as well. The fourth midfielder is someone who's just come back from injury. He's in training, and that is Bellingham. And he is the second highest scoring midfielder in UCL Fantasy, only behind Bryce Mendes. And maybe if Bellingham had played in Matchday 4, he could have usurped the Spaniard and become number one in that position. I ultimately think he is the best midfielder, period, because of his price and everything he has to offer. Ball recoveries, goals, assists, man of the match awards, pretty much everything that you can name. Bellingham has it in abundance. He's an all-round midfielder, and he's had an amazing start to life at Real Madrid. Now, the final midfielder will be Bryce Mendes, the highest scoring midfielder in the game, but I'm a bit less keen on him. I think maybe that's down to the huge disappointment in Matchday 4, missing the penalty, and despite Sociedad winning comprehensively against Benfica, Bryce Mendes produced a 1 point. He's still a great option, by the way. He does feature in this team, but I'm just a bit more cold on him. And in recent La Liga games, Bryce Mendes hasn't scored or assisted. It's worth mentioning, I still think he's a good UCL fantasy option, and he'll continue to do just fine as long as he gets the minutes. But there's a few issues you can always level at these sort of limitless or wildcard teams, especially once we approach the end of the group stages. Matchday 6 is going to be absolute chaos in terms of rotation, and a few players here could be benched. You just never know. But I think the vast majority, if not all, will start, especially in Matchday 5. This could be a completely different scenario in Matchday 6. But if there are any other midfielders you think are worth mentioning, then be sure to let me know. Remember, Musiala is injured, unfortunately, and it looks like he's going to miss out in Matchday 5. Otherwise, he would have had a great chance of featuring in this team, but it is what it is, and I still like this midfield 5. It's very balanced. You've got 5 different attacks covered, 5 of the very best in the Champions League so far this season, and now all that's left really to complete the team are the 3 forwards. Harry Kane has been in terrific form for Bayern Munich. He's breaking records. He's always been a consistent player at Tottenham and England, but you just can't really deny the quality he has in terms of the build-up, the goal scoring. He's an all-round attacker. The only thing he lacks is pace, and the biggest enemy you're going to have with Harry Kane is injuries or rotation. If he can survive both and he starts against Copenhagen, I could see a brace or a hat-trick. So he's one of the very best captaincy options in Matchday 5. He's one of the very best forwards in UCL Fantasy, period. He's got the most points of any striker. And Erling Haaland is next up. He's in second place in terms of UCL fantasy points, and he scored 5 goals the last time he played Leipzig at home. That was in the knockout stages of last season's Champions League. He's got more goals than games played for Manchester City in the Premier League and also in the Champions League. He is a goal-scoring machine, and I think these two are the best forwards in UCL fantasy. Last season we had Lewandowski, especially Kylian Mbappe, who has been fantastic, but I think right now we've got 2 clear standouts in Kane and Haaland. You've also got the likes of Morata and Griezmann, who both are on around 30 points, and they're just behind Haaland and Kane. I think the gap will start to increase as we progress through the competition, and I would still recommend at least one of Morata or Griezmann to at least consider. And for me, one of those 2 forwards should be your final striker on the Limitless. I'm going to go for Griezmann, but Morata is also just fine. He's scoring more goals than Griezmann, but Griezmann has the man of the match potential, I think, over the Spaniard. I think either one of them is fine. And if you remove another Arsenal player elsewhere, it could be David Raya or maybe one of the others, depending on your preference. You could consider Gabriel Jesus up front. Remember, he is fantastic in the Champions League. If he starts against Lens, I think Gabriel Jesus could be even better than Saka in Matchday 5. So that's definitely worth considering. But in order to do that, you have to remove another Arsenal player, as we already have a triple up, so it's definitely worth mentioning there. I have gone for Griezmann to cover the Atletico Madrid attack, but Feyenoord away isn't an easy game, and originally I was going to go for Vinicius Jr. at home to Napoli, but he picked up an injury against Colombia in a 2-1 defeat there for Brazil, so it looks like he's going to be out for the next couple of months, maybe until January, which is a shame. Otherwise, he would have featured in this team, I think. And now you're looking at maybe Højlund, Gabriel Jesus, Morata, Griezmann, and there's always going to be other shouts here and there, but I think I'm going to stick with Griezmann on the Limitless. It's a close call. Oyarzabal against Salzburg could be decent as well. I think Real Sociedad have so many good options in all positions in this season's Champions League. Lautaro Martinez is always going to be a decent shout too, although he hasn't been at his absolute best in this season's Champions League. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which forwards would you go for? And also the same goes for every other position and also the captaincy. And that's the last thing we need to do in order to determine this 50-man squad on the Limitless. So remember, you start ter Stegen, you bench David Raya, and then if ter Stegen blanks or doesn't do too well, you can make the substitution there. And the same goes for your lowest scoring outfield players, and then bring on those from the 29th of November. So on the 28th, I would captain Erling Haaland, very simple stuff. And on the 29th, Harry Kane. I think it's a very good policy in every single group stage game. They're the two best strikers in UCL Fantasy. You've also got Bellingham as well, who's always going to be a good shout. But I think this week, considering the fixtures and also the chances of starting, Haaland and Kane should be the best captains. And that's what I'm looking to do with my own team selection, as I'll discuss next week as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, so there's going to be the best wildcard team selection and deadline stream. And let's keep on pushing towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, and the UCL Fantasy League. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 5 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.